Welcome back to the X Podcast. Here at the table, we have Mr. Zach Gurley.
Question.
Okay.
I'm sorry to cut off the intro. Bit the lead a little fast there. You called it the Putin table a couple episodes ago.
Yeah, we don't do that anymore.
Yeah, you did. Why'd you call it that?
Because he loves Putin.
You love Putin?
Yeah, he's a friend of his.
Yeah, I definitely don't. We have called it that the last 2 or 3 years. Did I call it that again? A couple
Yes,
weeks ago?
you did.
You have been trying to call it the long table.
The long table.
Yeah. Although I
Yeah,
did hear there is,
Because I could,
believe, a ceasefire.
I could point out some people
Did
who
you
do
guys
love
see
Putin.
that? Is that a ceasefire that I heard between
No.
Russia and Ukraine?
There was
It's on the table.
It's on the table.
Well, there was the blow-up meeting with Zelensky. That there was the removal of military aid to Ukraine. Then there was a reversal
It's a reinstatement of it.
that yesterday.
I thought I saw but I don't know if it was approved. It was a reinstatement potentially based upon the
So there's
ceasefire.
Tens of thousands of Ukrainian refugees now that are being impacted.
Why would there be a reinstatement of military aid to Ukraine if there's a ceasefire that's happening?
That's because the support for whatever they needed. That's what the article said, that there was a reinstatement that was agreed
But why
upon.
would they need military aid if there's a ceasefire?
I'm sure it's just for more of national support for whatever they're using, like actual materials, like aid. We're probably sending aid. It's not all probably weapons. They're probably using it for other things too.
But I've heard that almost 80% of what Congress has appropriated for Ukraine has been spent actually here in America. Replenishing our own supplies.
You know, I don't know.
That we've sent. That's been pretty widely reported
Well,
out there.
is that any different then? It's like, let's say you've got stacks of bombs that you have saved for your own military, and they need them. So instead of like going and paying to make more, you actually ship your bombs over, and then you pay money to replace them. Isn't it the same thing?
I mean, potentially, except they say that there's wide-scale corruption and fraud within Ukraine, and that's the reason why we shouldn't be sending the money. But most of the money is being spent here in America.
Well, there might be wide-scale corruption in Ukraine, in their government, but we know there's none in ours. So I guess it doesn't matter. You're going to find corruption whichever hood you lift. So
Zero corruption, sir. Let's move on.
Yeah, I know.
It's everywhere, unfortunately.
Poor Pastor Zach, not poor Pastor, but you'll send me articles and ask for my thoughts. I don't
He
know.
doesn't read any of them.
I've stopped sending him articles.
I know. I read your articles.
I don't know. At some point, we need to, in the next month or two, circle back, have another political conversation.
Well, the world will completely change in the next month. So
I know.
So we might as well wait and then.
I know. Yeah, well,
New shift in power.
People will change their minds 9 times in the next 11 weeks. But I just, it's interesting. From Trump's first term, no matter how crazy things got, I watched, read the news, kept up. During Biden's term, no matter how crazy things got, I watched, listened to the news, listened to all the. But this last month and a half, for some reason, for me, I've just tapped out.
You're free.
I'm just like I don't know. I'm not.
But don't you think ignorance is bliss? Like sometimes life is just better when you unplug.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I do think sometimes it's better.
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, it's funny because my sister, I can't reiterate enough how politically homeless I feel. But my sister, who would say she would verbalize for herself, she's far left, whereas my parents are pretty far right. My sister's extremely far left. And the other day, I just asked her how she was doing. I could tell she's struggling. And I said, hey, you should just detox for a while. And she's like, well, I think it's important that I stay informed.
No.
And I'm like, I think that card's overplayed a little bit.
Yeah.
I do think there's a measure where it's good to be abreast of, current events and everything that's going on. Would you stop? Would you stop grinning?
What?
Yeah, I'm at this table of middle schoolers, and so anyways,
You say that like
the moment that came out.
Time out. You say that like if one of us wouldn't have said that you wouldn't be doing the exact same thing.
If you would have said it, it would have been funny. I will admit that.
Okay.
I will admit that.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Okay.
That was
Exactly.
Anyways,
I think that I agree with what you said to your sister. Mm-hmm. I think that's unnecessary. I think people that can disconnect from it probably are genuinely happier. And the reality is being aware of what's going on is not actually going to change the world or the situation,
Right.
but it will change yours.
Yes.
And so I do think if you're so politically invested in everything that's going on to the point that it's affecting your, I'm not happy, I'm worried, I'm in fear all the time, man, I think that's a great time. You should unplug from news. You should unplug from, if you need to, social media.
Yeah.
Get a different algorithm.
And the truth is, like, if something is the day and age we live in is so interconnected and so digital that even if you do like unplug and don't watch or read news for a while, anything that's really, really big that would affect you, it's going to be impossible for you not to hear at some point.
Yeah, I was going to move on, but because you guys brought this up, I'm going to push back a little bit.
Well, you are the guy that will not disconnect from news.
It's not true.
Did you say it's kind of true or not true?
Not true, 100%. Throughout our culture, or our history, let me say our history, let's just say America, whenever people have been plugged in to what's going on, especially if they feel like there is an injustice or something that needs to be changed or something that needs to be attention brought to it, it's people paying attention and then taking action that has brought that change. So if there's a group of people, and I would say studies show, statistics show, there's a large group of people that have concerns or worries about the future of the nation. I mean, it would be natural that they would be plugged in and dialed in for the purpose of maybe wanting to make an effective change. And I think that that's not necessarily a bad thing.
It's not. It's
No.
not a bad thing unless it's affecting your entire psyche.
And I just think there's an extreme.
And I don't know what you're like. What are you going to change that's going to fix the economy? I mean, I hope the elected official, like I want to be involved in the
Right.
process to put people in
Well,
place that
But I
hopefully
think
will
we all have
affect
to be,
it.
and I
But
think we have to all be honest too. Like, if I'm watching it all the time, because I agree with you. Like, I mean, if there is a major injustice and there's a major cultural thing that I feel like I need to put my prayers, my energy, my voice behind, I agree. That's really important. When it comes to, let's just be honest, the day-to-day, what scandal or controversy is going to happen today, I don't know how much mental, psychological help that is to know it. And at some point, I have to search my heart and be like, am I really doing that because I want to be involved to make change? Or do I have a psychological addiction to the train wreck that I can't stop watching?
Yeah, sure. I'm not going to push back on all that per se, unless someone just feels like that. And this is where like politics has gotten so personal. Like it's the people involved in it that people have issues with in today's world, and so they can't help but pay attention to what they're doing every single day. We could go on and on about this, whatever. But let me say I resonate with the thought about like it's just. I mean, even for me, as someone who likes to be involved and know what's going on, whatever, I've found myself taking time to step back and relax and do things. And in the evenings, instead of scrolling, I've been actually reading. And I was reading a book, and this is a very new thought. This was last night. I was still mid-processing this thought, and I brought this up to you. But there was a phrase that kind of caught me in the book, and the phrase, and I'm going to butcher the quote, but something was like that the process of acquiring or developing your intellect is one of the most kind of pure or good like processes that someone can go under. So I was curious, and I was thinking like, oh, how would one grow your intellect, or how do you grow in your intelligence or in your thought process? And I was like, oh, that'd be kind of a fun question to bring to a podcast table and have a conversation around. So I'll start the conversation. How do you grow your intellect?
Well, not to be that guy, I kind of want to almost go back, and I know you're paraphrasing to the best of your ability.
Yeah.
I kind of want to go back and first just nuance the first part of that, which is that it's one of the most pure exercises that you could have is to grow your intellect. I actually think motivation matters. Not to get all, if I can go all Bible spiritual, there's the kind of pursuit of intellect that Paul talks about that just puffs you up, your ego. There's the pursuit of I as someone who's been very bookish my whole life and loves to learn, loves to read, loves to try to grow my mind, I resonate, but I think it's probably also should come with a warning of you can, in the words of Leonard Ravenhill, grow your brain and shrink your heart. And so I think it is important to look at your motivation for pursuing intellect. But I do love the question of how do you grow your intellect. I have 1,000 thoughts. I want to hear yours first, though.
1,000 thoughts?
I have 1,000. Maybe not 1,000, but a dozen.
So
or
I'm the kind of person that craves knowledge. You know, hopefully not to the point where knowledge puffs up, but I do. I think I'm the kind of person that has an almost insatiable appetite for learning. And like the first place, here's what's funny, is I didn't when I was younger. When I was in high school, I hated school. Like hated it. I don't even think I did any homework my entire senior year.
But I don't know that you have to equate.
I know, but I'm saying that the system that we often grow up in, I actually think can sometimes dismantle a hunger for intellect or for knowledge or for thought or for reason or for all of that. There's something we've seen over and over. There's something about the educational structure or system that almost kind of removes the appetite, and it just kind of is like, you have to learn these things. So these are your required classes. This is what you have to take, and you just lose any passion for it. And so I remember, feeling that way, finishing high school, going, woohoo, last thing I wanted to do was go to college yet because I did not like my experience there. And then fast forward to years later when I finally did go to a higher level of education for a purpose, and I found myself absolutely in love with it. And I excelled in college. I wanted to be there. I was also a little bit older and more mature. I wasn't 17 years old, and so there was some benefit, I thought, to actually going to school a little bit later. I wanted to learn. And I was sitting in classes with kids who didn't want to learn, and it kind of felt like I was looking at myself when I was 18 years old, and I'm sitting in classes when I'm 22 years old, 23 years old, and I'm there for a purpose and a reason, and I'm excited, and I want to learn. And I'm sitting with these kids, and as I would talk to them, they're, again, kids. I make it sound like they're real young, and I was old. They were a little younger than I was. But when I talked to them, you could tell none of them wanted to be there. None of them cared about actually learning. They were all fulfilling an expectation that mom and dad had or whatever to be at school, right? And so I actually appreciated what I got from school a little bit later, which was it did kind of put it spiked something inside of me that I loved learning. I loved being in class. I know there's a lot of remote, but I actually liked the interaction that happened in class and the dialogue that happened. And so I think that kind of shifted for me. And so, from that point, I've had to continually challenge myself on how to grow my intellect. And so probably the thing that has probably stretched again, I think it's an interesting question, right? Because historically speaking, whether it's IQ tests, the intelligence quotient that has kind of come out as basically this idea that it's pretty much set.
Yeah, you can't change it.
You can't change your IQ much. It's the way in which you can learn. It's the way in which it's not how much you have, right? And so the IQ is kind of formed, they would say, at a young age, or I don't know when we stop figuring out our process of learning, which I think about you probably. I think about myself now and the way I was when I was younger, and it's just really hard to believe that an assessment then and an assessment now would produce the same result. Now, if you're asking questions that are algebraic formulas and things versus when I was in high school, I probably would have done better then than I would right now. Yep. If you ask me now, right? If that's how you assess intelligence, if you assess intelligence as a capacity to learn or an ability to rationalize or reason, or I don't know how you define intelligence, I feel like mine has grown exponentially by exposing myself to new ideas and I would say thoughts and ideas that I don't necessarily think I agree with. I think that has been probably one of the biggest drivers for me is it whenever you're forced, here's a great way for me to, I guess, express it. I think when you are forced to explain why you believe something, it will cause you to have to go on a journey of learning. And the ability will stretch your intelligence.
No, I love that.
Because I think it's easy for us just to parrot what we've been told we believe.
Yeah.
This is what we believe about capitalism. This is what we believe about politics. This is what we believe about God. This is what we believe about the Bible. This is what and you can be in environments and you're just told from a young age. For me, where I feel like I've stretched the most is when I have challenged my own preconceived notions, my own, I guess, just kind of like mentality, my own thoughts about things that I have just held. The moment I confronted them with kind of this sounds bad, but a doubter's, a skeptical, like, why do I believe that? Is that true? Well, I had this person say that to me. Or I had, when I was younger, I had these professors. When I had this in my church, and I had this. Is that true? Really true? And you step back and then you think about reality, and then you go back and wrestle with that thought again, and then you build that against every place else. Where we're talking about theology. So we do that in theology. You take that idea, and someone does it, and then you ask this question again, and then you put it against the backdrop of the rest of it. Then you put it against the backdrop of reality, and you go, I think we've misinterpreted it. And so for me, I think it's been that confronting what you held is true to get to a point of actually being able to explain why you believe it's true. Like that for me has been probably one of the things in my journey that has, I think, probably stretched my intellect a little bit.
Good. Love it. What about you?
My journey's similar but different. Some in the sense that I hated school, but I fell in love. My dad, my parents were both educators. I kind of felt bad for them because they're both in the education system, and I was doing terrible in school. But
How bad were you doing in school?
Pretty bad.
Do you remember should we all just mention what our GPA was in high school? Mine was not good, so that's why I was just asking. Do you remember it?
I don't, but here's what I do remember. And I think I put this in the book. This shows how much, because where I'm different from you is, because you hated school, you hated the learning process. I always had an insatiable appetite. Like I remember, especially from the first time I picked up my first book, Goosebumps. It was when the first Goosebumps book came out. I was in the first grade, and I've been in the middle of a book ever since. I fell in love with reading, and I fell in love with stories, and I fell in love with being able to research, and I would ask questions, and so I've always been. To me, the number one way that you grow intellect is to nurture your curiosity, and I think the more you can nurture your curiosity in multiple ways, the better. But so I always loved learning, but I was horrible at school if it wasn't what I was into. I'm sure part of it at the time was just maturity, discipline, whatever.
Yeah.
But I remember in high school that I was in the top 10% of the class in SAT scores and the bottom 10% of the class in GPA. And
wow,
I think that's called lazy.
Is that called you're not applying yourself? Yeah, it was laziness was my biggest issue in high school.
Yeah, and so I think there's so many ways you can go with that. I have always heard the whole IQ is static thing. It just doesn't make sense to me, and I understand. I think what they're saying, but the whole idea of, I forget that study, but in the Genius of Jesus, they talk about like 97% of people are a genius at this age, and then they, years later, less, years later, less, years later, less. So that eternal optimist in me, and the way I believe we're designed and created, is we all do have genius in us that can be nurtured or relearned or unlearned bad patterns. And I think there's a lot to it. I think there's first of all, I think there's software and hardware issues when it comes to your intellect. We don't talk about hardware enough. Dr. Iman, famous, celebrity psychiatrist, talks about this, about we don't look at our brain. I think there's things we do that physically that help or diminish our intellect or our mental agility. I mean, we know that excess drinking hurts brain cells.
Yeah.
The amount of sugar you take in, the amount of sleep you get. There's all these books. I've had loved ones that I've worried, God, I don't ever want, because I'm on my mom's side of the family. There's Alzheimer's, there's dementia, so I'm a little bit I've read books, and they all pretty much say the same things: blueberries, dark chocolate, wild caught Alaskan salmon. There's all these things you can do that are just revolutionary for your brain cells, and coincidentally for your gut, because your gut and your brain are connected. So I think there's even just hardware stuff that we can do. Exercise. Every time you exercise, it releases was osteocalcin from your bones that actually prevents your brain as best as possible from the detrimental effects of aging and Alzheimer's. And so I think there's hardware stuff I think you can do to affect it. And then I love what you said. I think every time you expose yourself to a contrary point of view with an open mind, you grow a different part of your brain. I think this is the part of me, and I know I'm biased in this. I think experiences open your brain. You know, when I lived in Argentina and was trying to learn Spanish, they told us on the other side of learning a language, structurally your brain changes. I think, you know, people that run marathons, you know, structurally on the other side of running a marathon, your brain changes. I think the more you open yourself up to new experiences, it expands your brain. So I think I have a lot of thoughts. 'Cause I think to me this is an exciting idea that I can grow my intellect.
Yeah.
And that I can grow my brain, I can grow my capacity. And I think if I protect my hardware, I stay curious, I stay open, and I keep having new experiences, I think those are great ways.
Yeah, I don't know if I would add much more to what you guys said. You guys covered pretty much everything.
That's it? Those are the only ways?
No.
What did the book say?
No. Well, first of all, the book didn't have. The book was nothing to do.
Oh, just a throw-off statement.
It was a
throwaway.
throw-off statement
I gotcha.
that caught my attention.
Okay.
So the book has nothing to do with this topic. You know, for me, it was a little different. So, like in high school, pretty good test scores, pretty good GPA.
Do you want to tell us what your GPA is?
No,
You haven't memorized.
only if you guys do.
I will.
Go ahead, you first.
2.89.
Okay, I was at 3.67.
I don't even remember mine, but I'm pretty sure it's lower.
Not than a 2.89, I bet.
Oh, I bet it was.
Oh, my. That's, yeah. That was pretty bad.
I could have been even higher if we had. Yeah.
Are you a little bit salty that you didn't have like AP courses back then that could have put you at a 4.3?
I did have AP courses.
Oh, wait, and you. Oh.
Canal didn't weight their grades. So.
You got.
But it's okay.
Okay.
It's okay. I can relate in the sense that throughout high school, I just didn't apply myself. If I would have applied myself a little bit more, I would have had a higher
Sounds like you did.
GPA.
What'd you say your GPA was? That sounds like applying yourself to an extent.
It was enough to get by.
For high school, that's probably you probably had a level of application there.
Yeah, college.
You're just different now.
College was more of a struggle. In college, it was closer to like the 2.89.
Oh,
like similar.
I went the other way.
Yeah.
I was 4.0.
College was a little bit harder for me.
Here's the other thing. I waited a little bit.
I would have been different if I would have waited.
I'm telling you, it makes a huge difference. The learning process makes a huge difference. I'm not.
It was a maturity thing.
That's a whole other conversation. I'm just not sure that we have the best system for learning, to be honest with you.
We don't.
But I think for me, like the time periods in my life where I feel like I have learned the most, it's when I have set, like, it sounds cheesy and elementary, but it's when I've set out to learn something. It's like when which is kind of similar to what you said. Well, when you have something, a challenge or a problem in front of you, and you begin to like figure out how you're going to tackle this or do this or figure it out. I don't want to say it's 100% of the time that us as humans can solve the problems that are in front of us, but I feel like 7 out of 10 times when there's a problem in front of us, if you just set your mind to it, I think that we have the capacity as humans to solve the problems that are in front of us. I have no empirical data to back that up. That's just Zach's opinion.
Just 73%.
I think I think there's an interesting nuance to what you're saying, though. One of the things I was studying when I was writing the book was Dr. Adam Kupik's study on rats and statistical confidence, and how every time the rats were able to solve a problem, their confidence, their literal mental confidence grew. And literally, Dr. Adam based confidence on statistical decision making. And I do think, because I think there's different types of intelligence. I mean, I think both of you are incredibly intelligent. And I think one of the areas you're really intelligent is strategic intelligence. And so I think, but even listening to you, like I can hear the confidence. Like I feel like no matter how big the problem is, if I put my mind to this, I can solve it.
Yeah.
But I also think there's a level of like confidence of you've grown. I think you have a natural gifting in that, but you've also grown that.
Correct. And I think, so that would probably, as we're working this out and I'm externally processing this on the podcast with you guys, it would be challenging yourself to grow.
Yeah.
There's so many people, I think, live in fear of I can't do that, or that's for someone else, or I'm
Yeah.
not capable of that. And it sounds like a broken record, but I think if have that mindset or that thought process going into it, I just think you're never going to
Yeah.
get to where you want to go.
I have a question. Like, even though we've already kind of answered it, I think maybe with an aspect of clarity, how would you define intellect or intelligence? Because I do think where I sometimes get lost in this, you look at yourself. The older you get, you think I'm more intelligent. You may not be any more intelligent, but
Might
you
just
have
have
a
more knowledge.
lot more knowledge.
Yeah.
You're a lot wiser. You have experience. And I think sometimes we would relate experience with knowledge. And I don't, and that's obviously not what we're trying to speak to and address, right? Or becoming, I don't know, more open-minded, like this idea, I agree, and, challenges you, I guess seeing the world from someone else's lens, empathy, I think we would all sit at this table and go, this is a very, very high value that can really help change and shape the way you think. But I don't know that actually affects our intelligence or intellect.
Well, because somebody we know would argue that empathy is the highest level of intelligence.
It could be. I don't know if that's the case. At least not. I probably would say that's not the case in a classical sense of the definition of intelligence. Would be my guess.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's why I'm asking like the question of how, as we're sitting here at the table talking about it, and we probably should have done this first. How would you guys define intelligence? Again, I said
My
something
top
earlier.
of
Is it the
mind-
ability to learn? Because that's what's often attached to IQ, not how much you know, or is it something else?
I mean, the ability to learn makes a ton of sense, but this is kind of a new thought. I was actually reading this in a different article. Perhaps it's the ability to synthesize the information that you have learned. Because I think that it's one thing to know a lot of things, but it's another thing to make connections and draw lines between things and arrive at a rational conclusion that moves you forward in whatever you're dealing with.
Yeah.
So, okay, to go back to my problem analogy, when you're looking at a problem, I think a high level of intelligence, or a person who has a high level of intelligence, can look at the different pieces of the puzzle and they can see before anyone else can, or faster than anyone else can, how those puzzle pieces fit together.
Yeah.
And they do it faster than everybody else. And so your ability to synthesize information, connect the dots faster, and arrive at the end point before anyone else, that would be a marker of intelligence.
I think that's actually probably a great definition of intelligence. The idea, I'd say it's kind of a great way to maybe, I'd say, qualify or quantify it.
Yeah.
Is the speed at which you can solve problems.
Yes.
Because a lot of the IQ tests are built around that.
Yes.
How fast do you see the solution
Yes.
to what is being asked?
Well, even like I've heard the definition of wisdom being really what you're talking about is pattern recognition.
Yes.
A lot of it's pattern recognition. I like that. I think maybe connected again, we're all like just processing on the spot. I think knowledge is part of intelligence. I don't think it's the major part of intelligence. And I like the synthesis of information. I think the first thought that came top of my mind when you said what is intelligence is the level of your intelligence is your agility, fluidity, and clarity of your thought processes. I think the way that you think and how fluidly you connect ideas and how fluidly and clearly you're able to articulate your thoughts. I think part of that is synthesizing, part of that is problem solving. But to me, when I think of intelligence, I just think of mental agility. Mental agility in connecting ideas, clarifying ideas, synthesizing ideas, understanding ideas, articulating ideas.
Yeah.
It was interesting. The article I was talking about was that like when you look at the history of civilization, the axiom knowledge is power is true, or has been true, because societies that had the most knowledge, for example, the ability to make an atomic weapon, brings you a lot of power. We're now entering into, what is this age called? It's called the age of what? Information. We're now entering into an age in which more information than ever is at our fingertips, and we have access to information. We have access to the answers that we need to know more than ever. And so I do think moving forward, if someone's listening and is asking themselves, well, how do I grow my intellect? How do I grow this? Like, and I don't know if I've got a great answer, but start figuring out like how to synthesize or solve or connect dots faster. And the only way you do that is to put yourself in challenging situations. Okay, I just thought of a
play Sudoku.
well, actually, I just thought of one. Chess.
Yeah.
It sounds dumb.
Lots of different ways
Yeah.
to solve a problem.
But
right? And
but I think like there's just simple ways you can start to do things to like start looking at the challenges or things you're facing in life through a different lens. Okay, what other pieces of information do I have access to that if I brought into the equation would change the situation that I'm facing in front of me right now?
I also think like it sounds weird because when you think about intellect and knowledge, you think more of like, what am I sitting and thinking about and learning? But I also think we underestimate, ironically, how much action impacts intellect. It's that whole idea of like
Experience.
Well, it's experience. There is, I mean, and not to be that like, because I know not everybody has the ability to travel. There are so many links that or studies that link like travel with intelligence, that link open experiences with intelligence. But I'm more talking about like, it's that whole idea of like, I believe in affirmations. I believe look in the mirror, tell myself I can do it. But there's that whole thing of no matter how many times I tell myself that, my brain doesn't change until I do it. And I think so many times we don't realize that we can say something, we can learn something, but it's, I mean, not to be, again, all spiritual, but it's not until I do something. My brain is only changed by what I do, not just by what I know. And I think we underestimate and that, and even our emotional health. Our emotional health affects our intellectual health. It's that whole thing of, gratitude's the lubricant of the brain. Like when you're in a dark place, you're less open to learning. You're less open to your mind being. I know for me, like if I'm in a bad place emotionally, my brain is not creative. And my mind is not agile, and my heart, my mind is not open, and so I think there's even just stuff that's like that might seem ancillary that really affects us. Couple more practical things because I know we'll have to wrap in a minute. This sounds so simple, but it's so true in any area of our life. Who we surround ourselves with, our inner circle, is the sea level of our life. It affects us, the company we keep. And I think one of the greatest ways, if I want to raise my level of thinking, is to get around high-level thinking people. I think you can't take a week and immerse yourself in high-level thinking, podcasts, books, company, and it not raise the level of your own thinking. I think it's that way with anything. If I want to be more courageous, I need to get around courageous people.
Yeah.
If I want to be more loving, I need to get around loving people. And if I want to think higher, I need to get around people that think higher. I think another one is... I know I sound so old school, but reading. And I mean this with zero judgment, but I'm amazed the older I get, the more people I meet that just don't read. And I just, I think, I'm not going to be all TD Jakes readers or leaders or readers, and I know some people prefer Audible or whatever, but reading to me is just like 101 of how to stretch your brain, grow your vocab, grow the ideas in your mind. In a world of so many distractions, because part of intelligence is the ability to focus, like you said, and solve something. And our attention span is shrinking by all the distractions. The thing about reading is it forces you to slow down and focus and learn something. And so I think we underestimate the old school power of just reading. And then the third one is kind of going back to attributes is humility. Is it Psalm 22? Maybe it's not Psalm 22. It's in the Psalms where it says, God will teach the humble his way. And I think spiritually and even just practically in life, the humble or the posture of humility is the open posture of, I don't know, but I'm going to keep the posture of student the rest of my life, and I could be wrong. What was it G.K. Chesterton said is, it's not arrogant to think that you're right. It's only arrogant to be unable to imagine how you might be wrong. And I think when I have a humble posture, I am more than likely going to have a curious posture.
Yeah.
I'm going to have a teachable posture. I'm going to have a hungry to learn posture. And yeah, those are a few of my
good.
thoughts.
Yeah, it's good. I think the last thing I'll just say is that there's two thoughts that I have. You mentioned something about the age of information. I mean, I think we can probably emphatically say that we are shifting already into the age of intelligence.
100%.
Like the last couple 100 years has been the age of information, and now it's converting to the age of intelligence as artificial intelligence is taking over. And we're kind of going, oh, intelligence is actually the question that people are asking about, not information. See, I think the thing is, all the things that we do to consume and have information are great, but it probably, as much as those things are helpful, and they can definitely infect your brain and all of that aspect, but we've gone from the internet, which is a store of information, to now having machines replicate intelligence. And the intelligence isn't just spitting out the information, but it is actually taking all of
for
the
us.
information. And then, that's why I like even the word you used, and then synthesizing and giving it to giving it to someone based on what you think they want. That's intelligence, right? And I think the last thing I think of that can actually stretch your intelligence, because it's really hard to kind of know where the line is between what we're trying to understand. How do you actually change your intelligence if you can, versus, learning and growing your capacity in the way you think?
Yeah.
Because I don't even know how scientists would say changing the way you think about things may not even affect your intelligence. It's maybe how quick you can think about that, how quick you can connect the dots. I mean, that might be what they say. But I do think if there's anything that probably has, if there's anything that's probably helped expand my intellect, I think it's been trying to learn how other people think.
Yep.
Like that has been one of the things for me, even from a preaching standpoint. One of my favorite things about specific preachers that I'll listen to on a regular basis, it's not so much the content, is I'm asking the question when they say something, going, wait, how did you come to that conclusion? You go, I've read that passage 10 times and I've never had that thought.
Yeah.
Why would you have that thought about it? So what I always usually try to do when I hear that is I want to go, what questions are you asking to come up with that?
Yeah.
And, and that's probably a level of intelligence that people have when they're able to see and connect dots that maybe most people miss.
Yep.
And so I think even just surrounding yourself with people of high intelligence, it might pull you, if it's even possible. Gravitationally, it might pull you in the direction of increasing your intelligence, or we're stuck and it won't. So I don't know. It's an interesting. I don't know. If there's an answer for it, but
It's a good conversation.
Good conversation.
Yep.
So,
all right.
well, hopefully people can grow their intelligence or not.
Yeah. Who's the smartest person you know?
Alive?
Yeah.
Oh, Zachary.
I tell you what, it was so
He has the highest level of intelligence.
inspiring.
He had the highest GPA in high school.
Yeah.
It's definitely him.
It was so inspiring and also depressing. I finished Einstein's biography on the flight, and you just read people like that. You're like, you're going back.
What's crazy is the people that we deem as the most intelligent are the ones that do zero experiments. The theoretical physicists and scientists. They're the ones who literally
just lived in his brain.
They do experiments in their brain. They're not actual scientists that do stuff in the lab that prove things. They're the ones that sit up and think of, wait a minute, have we not thought the physics of this, and this? What if that? And then it gets tested out. And so it is like, if you could sit around Einstein for a while, would you start thinking different? Maybe. Maybe not.
Maybe.
Maybe not. I don't know. Some people maybe are just gifted with a higher level of intelligence.
You just touched on one thing, and I hate to leave. I know we're trying to wrap up.
We are.
Ask good questions.
Yeah.
Ask good questions.
When you're around people of extreme intelligence. I like that. It's good.
Yep. All right. Good conversation. Until next week, we will see you then.
Hey guys, it's Russ. Thanks so much for listening. We really believe if we can get around tables instead of behind screens, if we can talk to each other instead of at each other, we can make the world better. To help us do that, here are a few things you can do to help. First, if you haven't yet, leave a review on Apple or Spotify and hit subscribe on YouTube. This helps more than you know. Also, if you have been impacted by the community out of which this podcast comes, that's X Church. Maybe you're local or you've been touched by the messages and impact across the country, even the world. I want to encourage you to support this work. A powerful life principle is to invest in the people and places that invest in you. And so I want to invite you to do that right now by going to thex.church/give. You can give a one-time small gift, a sacrificial gift, or even become a recurring partner. Together, let's keep elevating the conversation, thinking higher, loving deeper, and making the world better. Cheers.